Hi everyone and welcome to another recipe video, and this week I'm making this super fluffy swirly matcha milk bread. And as you can see, yes, I did unfortunately break my mini cat bowl, but I managed to fix it using Faux kintsugi. And kintsugi is like a Japanese art where you stick broken plates together with golden resin, but I found another way to do it that's cheaper and I could do it at home and it's food safe. If you want to see how I did it, click on the link below so you can see my Instagram reel where I show you how. Anyway, to make the bread you're going to need 10 grams of fresh yeast, a teaspoonful of caster sugar, and I'm just adding 100 milliliters of warm milk here. Let's give it a good stir and then we're just going to set it aside until it's bubbly. Now while the yeast is waking up, check out my bowl hack. Now I don't own enough big bowls to use 2 bowls to proof 2 loads of bread in. So what I did is I created this little compartment out of tin foil and I shaped it so it has 2 halves so I can put my matcha side of the dough and my plain side of the dough in the same bowl. Just oiling it so that the dough won't stick later and setting that aside. And now we're going to make the dough. Take 350 grams of bread flour and we need 60 grams more caster sugar, just adding that in. About half a teaspoon of salt, I'm sort of eyeballing it here. And now I'm just giving it a little bit of a stir to combine and creating a little divot in the centre for when I add the wet ingredients. So now I'm just cracking one egg in, and this one had a bit of a blood spot which I took out off camera. I hate it when eggs have blood spots. Anyway, now I'm adding 30 grams of unsalted butter which is softened at room temperature, giving that a bit of a mash to get things going. And now I'm going to add that yeasty mixture. Yummy. You can see how it's all frothy. That's because the yeast has woken up. Give it a bit more of a stir. And now I'm just going to add another 65 milliliters of milk, and the reason why I didn't add all the milk to the yeast and the sugar at the beginning is just because it made it a bit difficult to incorporate all together, so I just sort of half-halved it. Now we're going to switch to our hands, which is my favourite bit, and we're going to knead this until it becomes a nice smooth dough. It is going to feel a bit sticky at first, but persevere and it'll be nice and smooth, I promise. So keep going. And you're going to want to knead this for about 10 to 15 minutes. Now, if you were wondering, yes, this milk bread doesn't need Tangzhong, which is the milk and flour paste, which I did in another recipe video. I'm going to link that above and below so you can see the other method of making milk bread. Right, nowadays, nice and smooth, we're going to chop it in half. I do have a proper bench scraper for bread, but it's always right at the bottom of my drawers. I couldn't be bothered to get it out today. I just used a normal butter knife, which wasn't ideal, but it sort of worked. And I'm just going to roll one into a vaguely neat ball, i.e. not neat at all. I'm going to set it aside because now we're going to take one of those and turn it into a matcha dough. And it's really easy to do that. All you have to do is flatten the one that you've chosen to become the matcha dough out just a little bit. And now we're going to add 1 tablespoonful of matcha into it. Although this process isn't hard, it will take you a little bit of time to knead the matcha fully into the dough, so you're going to need a bit of patience for this. All I'm doing here is I'm folding up into a little parcel so all that matcha doesn't puff out, and then I'm going to really go for it and knead it for as long as I can stand until the matcha is as well incorporated as possible. I love hyperlapse. Don't you wish you could just hyperlapse yourself through the boring parts of life? Now I'm taking my super high-tech 2-sided bowl. You can just be a normal person and use 2 bowls if you happen to have 2 bowls. I'm going to pop them in, and remember I have oiled these so they won't stick later. And now I'm going to cover them with cling film, and I'm going to wait until both of them have doubled in size, and this is going to depend on how warm or cold your room is. It took me about an hour and a half this time because my room was quite cold. In summer it would only take me half an hour. Right, whilst that's doubling, I'm going to butter up this loaf tin. And I'm just using some softened unsalted butter for this. Don't use salted, otherwise you'll get salty sides of your bread. Now let's take a look at our proof dough, and it's looking nice and puffy. As you can see, it's doubled in size now. I'm going to free it from its clingful bonds and punch them both down. Now that I'm done taking my anger at the world out on the bread dough, let's free them both and start rolling them out. So I'm just flouring the surface lightly so they don't stick. And I'm taking my plain bread here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll it out into a relatively thin rectangle so that the shortest side of the rectangle is the same length as the long side of my bread pan, if that makes any sense. You can see me checking there, I just did it roughly, I didn't really measure. I'm going to move this to the side and do the exact same thing with the matcha dough. It doesn't have to be 100% the same, you'll see in a minute I kind of tweak it a bit as I go along. And the thinner you can get the dough, the more swirly the bread's going to be. The thicker the dough, then you're going to get less of a swirl pattern. Now I'm just laying one on top of the other, and I'm just going to gently stretch the dough so that they both are roughly the same size. And I actually want the plain dough on the bottom, so I'm just going to flip it over now. And I'm going to continue reshaping and stretching the matcha dough on top of it. Now I want the plain dough on the bottom because when I roll it up, I want the plain dough to be on the outside, hiding the matcha inside. Now my favourite bit, rolling it up, so we're going to take it from the shortest side and as tightly as you can, roll it up like a jam roly-poly. Or a Swiss roll if you're not so au fait with British cuisine. I say cuisine like British food is some sort of high-class gourmet stuff. And the reason why we rolled it this way is so that when you cut it lengthways, you're going to see the nice pretty swirl. So I'm just going to pop this into my prepared tin, and I'm just going to jiggle it around a bit so it's nice and straight. And don't worry at this point that it doesn't completely fill out the pan, because now we're going to give it its final proof. So cover it with more cling film. Well, I just use the same cling film because environment. Actually, cling film is not good for the environment at all, but I try in small ways. Let me know if you have any alternatives. And I'm just going to set this aside until it doubles in size again. While that happens, I'm going to preheat the oven to 180 degrees C. And after another hour, look at how lovely and risen the dough is. It's completely filled out the tin. Right, last things last is we need to glaze it. So I've cracked open one more egg, and I'm going to give it a good beating and just add a little dash of milk to loosen it up. I ended up making egg fried rice with the leftover egg, by the way. I hate wasting any sort of food. By the way, have any other keen bakers who are watching this video used one of those Pullman pans before? You know, they're like a bread pan but with a lid on the top so you get a perfectly square loaf. Let me know in the comments below, I'm debating on whether I should get one. Okay, now our egg glaze is done. We're just going to brush this quite lightly on top of the dough and be a bit careful because the dough is going to be really soft and puffy now. I did at some stages gouge some holes into my dough, but luckily because it's so soft it's also quite easy to fix too. So just have a light touch. And as soon as this is done, we're going to pop it in our preheated oven and we're going to bake it for about 25 to 30 minutes or until it's fully risen and golden just like this. Look at how gorgeous it is. And the only thing left to do is to reveal that beautiful inside. Remember, you can find the full written down recipe for this on www.tashcakes.com, which I'll post down below, and find me on Instagram as tashcakestastes. And subscribe and hit the notification bell if you'd like to see more. And leave a comment if you'd like me to make anything in particular. Stay safe, be nice, and have a good week.